morning, everyone. Welcome to 1111 Downtown. I'm Tom McDermott, the pastor of the 1111 community, and really glad that you've joined in this morning. I hope that you are doing well. Take a minute to register your attendance there in the spaces provided. And while you're doing that, we'll go through a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to also welcome our visitors who are joining in for the first time. I hope you will take a moment to put your address and information in there. We'd love to send you one of our 1111 mugs or tumblers, as well as one of our 1111 masks. And we'd love to get those out to you if you will simply give us your address and information. I hope you find this time inspiring as well. And I know you'll find it unexpectedly pleasant. So we've got a lot of fun surprises, especially today, including the fact that Reverend Linda McDermott will be joining me in our conversation, our Advent conversation this third Sunday, as we take a sort of a skewed bit of a look at the traditional notions of peace, hope, love, and joy. Also, though, as a surprise, we have Peter Mayer with us this morning, coming during the message, and he'll provide us a song virtually. Almost always joins us every year in person. And this year he's joining us virtually, so that'll be a nice surprise. The band, of course, Brad and the band have some great music, so we're looking forward to that. Finally, we're towards the end of our financial year, and we've been so appreciative of the support of our community as we continue to be about ministries to those in special need this time of because of our COVID experience and this time of year. But we'd like to finish strong, and so we have a campaign we're calling Step Up. You can find it at fumcfw.org, and just inviting people not simply to finish out their pledges for the year, but also as you consider your weekly giving, that you would step that up by $20 or more if you're capable, and help us to finish the year strong with all the ministries that we are supporting as a community here locally and abroad. And we appreciate that very much. So again, good to be with you. Looking forward to our service and time together this morning. So let us begin.
Good morning, everybody. We're really happy to be joining you for the welcome candle today. We hope that you're happy and healthy wherever you're at, and we look forward to seeing everybody in person, hopefully very soon. Spencer in particular really misses the band, so he says hi to all of y'all. Please join us in repeating the very familiar welcome candle greeting. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, hey, my little twinkly lights are on right here, but I guess you can't see them in the broad daylight. But hey, maybe there's a little wisdom there. Sometimes the lights are on even when you can't see them yet. But anyway, for today's prayer, I've been looking through some old journals, several of them in fact, and in there are things I've prayed about or prayed for over time, and I find that there's a lot of repeated ideas here. There's often stuff like, help me to see things His way. Help me to figure out why people think what they do. I wonder if there's something here that I don't know yet. Oh, here's a good one. Help me to shine the spotlight on others instead of always taking center stage. Why on earth does he think this? Help me to understand what in the world he's thinking and why. Well, here I am, years later, and I'm actually still praying and thinking many of those same things. I think I'm a little easier on myself now because I know that I'm only human, and so are you and all of the rest of us here. And so now, I pray a little more like, may the streets of logic and the avenues of emotion be 4 lanes instead of just 2. And may I sometimes get out, climb over a fence, shimmy up a tree, and get a different perspective. Because it seems like that this is a better path to peace and joy and love. Amen.
All right. What's that? I got a rescue merry gentleman, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born upon this day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy, tidings of comfort and joy. Oh, yeah. From God our Heavenly Father, His blessed angel came, and unto certain shepherds brought tidings of the same, how that in Bethlehem was born the Son of God by name. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy, there's tidings of comfort and joy, of joy. Oh, star of wonder and star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, now guide us to that perfect light. Born a king on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again, king forever, ceasing never, and over us all to reign. Yeah. Oh, star of wonder and star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, now guide us to the perfect light, perfect light, perfect light. I got a rescue merry gentleman, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born upon this day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy, tidings of comfort and joy. Wow. Oh, star of wonder and star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, now guide us to the perfect light.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Linda McDermott. I'm glad to be here with Tom for this new series. And Tom,
Yeah.
what's up with the hat?
You like my new cap?
Well,
I am here today. We are here today to make Advent great again.
where did you get that?
You know, I've had this for a couple of years. I don't even remember where I got this, a conference or something, and I should have been using it the whole time because that's really, I'm going to put it over here on the drum and
That's a
fix
good
my hair
idea.
up.
Yeah.
It's, you know, we're kind of playing with Advent, right? That's what we've been doing in this
We're
series.
in Advent,
and we're in the third week of Advent.
Which is typically, the theme is typically love.
That's right. It's typically love.
It's been hope, peace, and today is love.
Right, and because I've been sort of about this, making Advent great again, but actually thinking about Advent in terms of who we are as the 1111 community, I've been thinking about those words peace, hope, peace, love, and joy in a different context,
You're
moving
reframing
beyond
them.
sort of like the tropism of these words
Yeah.
and looking at something deeper. So for love, I'm looking at the word curiosity.
Okay. And you're going to talk about that, because to me that one's a stretch. So what has love got to do with it?
What's love got to do with it?
Yeah,
I know,
with
okay.
curiosity.
With secondhand emotion. Well, anyway, what it is I'm going to give you an upfront a definition.
Okay.
And then we'll unpack it.
Okay.
Right, as we go along here. But so this is what I think about curiosity as love. Curiosity is love's antidote to contractual relationship. That's kind of a confusing, that's kind of an ambiguous statement, but let's hold on to that.
Okay.
Curiosity is love's antidote to contractual relationships with life.
Okay.
So it's a spark that breaks open fear, and it's a bridge to better understanding. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Also, there's also, if you think about curiosity, there's always the prize.
The prize.
The prize. You remember Cracker Jacks?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you had to eat the whole box.
You had to eat
get
the whole box,
prize, which wasn't bad.
Well, you know what? All you had to do was turn the box upside down.
Well, I guess I
find
wasn't
the
that
prize.
smart.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we're going to turn Advent upside down and make it great again. Anyway.
Well, let's get to the scripture.
All right, I'm going to read the scripture. And it's because we're kind of looking at it a little bit askance, a little bit different perspective. I'm using a text that's not typically used with Advent.
Of course you are.
I'm using probably one of the best-known texts of the Bible for anyone outside of church. I'm talking about John 3:16.
Wow. For Advent. Okay.
For Advent. But I'm going to read John 16 through 18, 3:16 through 18. And I'm going to use the Message version.
Yeah, it's always an interesting interpretation.
He does a really interesting take on it. So this is it. This is how much God loved the world. God gave the Son, and this is why. This is why God gave the Son, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in Him, anyone can have wholeness and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending the Son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it was. God came to help. God came to help, to put the world right again.
I love that.
And then the way he continues here is this is the crisis we're in. I like how he words these things. This is the crisis we're in. The light streamed into the world, but men and women everywhere ran for the darkness. They went for the darkness because they weren't really interested in the kingdom of God. And when everyone makes a practice of doing evil, addicted to denial and illusion, they hate God's light, they won't even come near it because they fear its exposure. But anyone working and living in truth and reality welcomes this light so that the work can be seen for the God work it is.
I just love his
and
interpretations of that.
And we're going to talk.
Instead of God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever shall believeth in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life.
Perish but have everlasting life. And for years in my post-evangelicalism, I couldn't take up this verse anymore. I just couldn't go there. I couldn't stomach it. I mean, it reeked of this kind of strict and rigid orientation to faith, right? It was, you pray, faith was about belief, and you prayed the believer's prayer.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a sinner, forgive me. I take you into my heart. I believe you are the Son of God. And then you're saved from hell.
Right.
You go to heaven. It's kind of this contractual relationship with God.
That's what you meant about
If I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. If I do this, God, you'll do this for me.
If this, then that.
If this, then
That's
that.
the contractual side of
That's how I always understood it. Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. Well, the funny thing is, though, when we read John 3:16, and it's put out there at football games and things like that, it's out of context. Number one, John is a very different gospel. It's written in a more mystical wisdom tradition. And so you have to be careful when you read John. And what is he meaning? And if you put it in its context, notice it comes right after the story of Nicodemus, which I don't think we realize that.
Right,
Nicodemus is the Pharisee. And remember that in John's gospel, the Pharisees are not crazy about Jesus. They're very anti-Jesus. But he goes to Jesus in the night, which means he's in darkness. And that's contrasted with Jesus, who is always seen as the light in John. So Nicodemus starts out, he compliments Jesus and saying, we know that you are from God. And Jesus affirms him. He says, you're right. Unless a person is born from above, it's not possible to see what I'm pointing to, which is God's kingdom. And Nicodemus gets very literal here and says, that doesn't make sense. How can you climb back in your mother's womb? Very literal.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, basically, you're not listening to me. You've got to be born of the Spirit. that same Spirit that hovered over the creation of the earth, that brought order out of chaos, that same Spirit in Genesis. There are two kinds of birth, Jesus says: physical birth, spiritual birth. You have to be connected to the creation Spirit in a new birth.
So it's as if he was saying to Nicodemus, you've forgotten the very ground of your being. You've forgotten the very context of your being.
Well, he does say that in a minute. I mean, he kind of says of that, because Nicodemus is still sort of obtuse, and Jesus says, are you telling me you still don't get this?
Right.
Because you're a Pharisee, and you don't know this stuff?
So we've taken this rational kind of the church over the centuries has taken this relational and invitational kind of understanding and what's restorational about it, and we've turned it into a contractual.
Or creed. It's like a creed. You must, here's the key verse.
Yeah.
It's the creed that you've got a doctrine.
It's static.
And it's not.
It becomes static and lifeless.
Exactly.
Which is part of the concern that often hits me this time of year too, is with the sort of static tropisms, if you will. Maybe that's too harsh a word. Kind of to trivialize it, we sort of just take these words on face value: peace, joy, hope, love, and they become Hallmark cards, right? I mean, they just sort of have this static understanding, and even when we contextualize it into the hope that something good is coming, we forget that the relationship is what this whole point is about God. It's this relational connection.
Well, even in the beginning of John, where he says, God became flesh and dwells among us. That's relational.
Yes.
That's not contractual.
Right. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It goes back, I mean, to me, and I need to research this a little bit, but it's been a while, but remember Abraham's original covenant? It's, we read it like, I will be your God if you will be my people. But I'm pretty sure if we go back and reread it, there's no if in there. It's just, I will be your God, you will be my people. And of course you must be faithful to the covenant, but there's no if there. And the Hebrew people kept reading it as an if. Like, well, if you don't do it, God's leaving.
Yeah.
But the thing is, God is always there.
And
it's kind of like that, like John 3:17. We don't read that. We just 16.
Right, the one that follows it. We stop at 16.
We do.
But the whole point of 16 is verse 17.
Yeah, let me, it says, well, you read it, but God did not go to all the trouble of sending the Son merely to point an accusing finger, telling the world how bad it is. And that's it. It's not condemnation. That's not part of what God's becoming incarnate in Jesus was to come down here and say, I'm going to tell you what's really wrong. It says God became incarnate. The Word became flesh in the opening lines of His gospel. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
To bring goodness.
That is exactly
Healing.
What this is about. It's about this path of shalom, this path of right
exactly.
relationship. I love how God is to make the world right. This relationship is how we make the world right. And that's the crux. We turn it into a creed and we miss the point that it's about this intentional engagement with life. The great commandment, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself, is an engaged relational way of being in life.
Yeah.
And so we miss that. And it also misses the curious nature of what God is.
Yeah, and curiosity and love. Curiosity as love.
Yeah, right. And do you know that curiosity and belief share the same root word? I didn't know that. You know what that root word is?
Well, I know the root of curiosity, cura, to care.
Yeah.
So, but
and
belief?
Yeah. I mean, it's rooted in that Germanic word. I don't remember how you pronounce it, but it means to love. And so it's the same thing. Belief and curiosity actually share the same root, which is an interesting. We think of curiosity as contradicting belief, as a challenge to belief. We don't want to be curious.
Yeah.
And yet but that didn't really come in.
Curiosity killed the cat.
Right. But that idea didn't really come into play until like the 12th and 13th century, as far as the church was concerned. That idea of certainty
belief
and
being
belief.
an intellectual assent to something.
Right.
I believe that.
Yeah, a creedal kind of affirmation.
Right. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it kind of misses some of the earliest practices of the church, which were all about community
Right,
and
right.
connection. And it says, as if Jesus was saying, at least in John's mind, you mentioned John's gospel being a bit different focus, and it
Right,
was written
it
the
is.
last.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, as if he's saying, if you care about this life, then act like it. Right?
Don't just make an intellectual assent.
Right, and don't go into hiding because you're afraid. Right? Instead, shed the illusions, shed the things that scare you,
Okay.
enter into relationship. I mean, shalom is this bringing right relationship to things. And how do you do that? Well, you have to understand in order to bring right relationship. And how do you get there?
Curiosity.
And that we'll finish with. I mean, we'll talk more about that now. But Peter Mayer did a song, and we asked Peter Mayer to join us today. He almost always joins us, in the Advent season,
during this season.
and we can't be together. So he's going to join us and offer this song called "Stables," which is a beautiful song.
It is beautiful.
And it really
It's
does,
one of my favorites.
It speaks to this way in which love kind of breaks into things. So
Great.
let's give that a listen.
Hello, everyone at 1111. It's Peter Mayer in Minnesota, here to share a song with you today. I'm so happy to be with you all. It was about a year ago that I was there last, and so I hope you're doing okay during this challenging time. So I'm here to share a holiday song for you. I hope you appreciate the decorations. I just decorated today. I'm kind of proud of it. So anyway, so no extra charge for that. So anyway, this is a song inspired by the story of Jesus being born in a stable. And so this is simply called Stables. Bethlehem, a manger waits, long ago and so today, where hatred weary people pray, love will come and lay there, and so do countless stables stand, hearts as harsh as desert lands, rough shelters in the wind and sand, so love will come and lay there. Love that opens fists of hate, heaps up gold on beggars' plates, love that shows a kindly face to enemies and strangers, and the walls of stables tremble so when the winds of fear and judgment blow, for a stable hopes in love alone. walls of stables glow brightly, that their light may go for miles in the darkness so. Love will find its way.
I love that
I do too,
piece.
yeah.
So beautiful.
I love-
that the opening.
And thank you, Peter. Thank you
Yeah.
for that again. So good to have you with us. But that song,
He's pretty phenomenal.
oh yeah, yeah. And
I love that opening.
Let's think about
I've
some
got
of the
the
verses.
lyrics
Yeah.
here. The opening lyrics, in Bethlehem a manger waits long ago, and so today, where hatred-weary people pray, love will come and lay there.
Yeah, and when I heard that, what it made me wonder is, we've been in this pandemic a long time. We've been in this divisive political reality a long time, and even with the changes coming up, there's still that device. Are we really hatred-weary? Are we really a hatred-weary people? I mean, I know we don't like hatred, but are we really not all in some way still participating in this?
I mean, I think I'm hatred-weary, but it's still really easy to just knee-jerk buy into that.
Right, to
So
default.
I guess I'm not that weary.
We kind of default to the we-they positions.
Oh, always.
The orientations.
Yeah.
Because as the verse says, we tend to run to the darkness. We tend to run from the fear. What creates anxiety, we tend to sort of orient then to the sort of safe zone, which is with our tribes, the people that think like us.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how does love really get in that case?
Curiosity. Well, this line here, and the walls of stables tremble so when the winds of fear and judgment blow. For a stable hopes in love alone and knows that love is the answer. So, we say that love is the answer. It's kind of like you were just saying, we got to act like it.
Right.
Like we actually do believe that love is the answer.
That's the hard part. And how do we get there? And that's where I think courage and that peace is really about courage, right?
Which is
like I said last
week, yeah.
And why curiosity is this antidote to the fear that we keep running from. But that's an intentional engagement. We have to be intentionally engaged with others, with life, with the moments, even with ourselves, to ask, are we falling back on a default here?
Right. Right.
And that's the challenge, that it's so hard to do that. So,
Curiosity is the antidote to fear. And that's, yeah.
I'm thinking of this story that you used to tell, and not for the same reasons we used to tell it.
Okay.
A lot of people have heard it, but I
I'm
want you to tell it
curious.
again.
Okay.
The story about, I think it's George Papaderos.
No,
Alexander
Alexander.
Yeah, the professor in Greece. Could you tell that real quick? Just
Well, Papaderos
remind me of that story.
lived in Greece, and he grew up in Greece during World War II, so he saw all the violence and the fighting there, and he was giving a lecture at an Institute of Peace that he built in Greece. And the architecture is really important because he intentionally built this institute between two hills. And on this side of the hill are the graves of the Greek peasants who died in some of those bloody battles. And on this side of the hill are the graves of Nazi soldiers who died during the bloody battles. And he built the institute in between those. And the main lecture hall is surrounded by all glass, so that when you're listening to the lecture, you're looking at this the whole time. And the story comes from Robert Fulghum, who wrote the book when I was I learned everything I needed to know. I
from
learned in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And he tells the story that he was there listening to Papaderos in this big lecture hall. And after he had finished, he said, "Are there any questions?" And people started to get ready to leave. And Fulgham said, I have a question. What is the meaning of life? And people started to laugh, and they continued to get ready to leave. And Papaderos says, "No, I'll tell you the meaning of life." And he said, "When I was a child in Greece, I saw all the bloody violence around here, and I had, very little to do. I didn't have any toys to play with, and so I was walking down the street one day, and I discovered a Nazi motorcycle that had been wrecked." And he said there were pieces of the side mirror on the ground, and I took one of the pieces of those mirrors and I began to play with it like a toy. And so I noticed that you could catch, I was curious, I like that.
Yeah, he was.
I noticed I could catch the light from the sun and reflect it into cracks and crevices and caves and dark places. And I made a game out of it. And he polished it off till it became very smooth. And then Papaderos reached into his pocket and he pulled out his wallet and he pulled out the mirror. He said, I still carry that mirror with me because as I got older, I realized that that toy actually was the meaning of my life. And then what he did was he took, the rays were coming in from the windows, and he took that mirror and he caught the rays and he began to reflect them on the hands and the faces of everybody in the audience. And he said, I realized that I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know, but with what I have and who I am, I can shine light into the dark places of this world.
Yeah.
I am not the light, he said. I'm not the source of the light. But I can shine light into the dark places of the world and the human heart.
Yeah.
That is the meaning of my life.
It's a beautiful Advent story, really, when you think about it.
Oh, the light.
The light in the darkness.
Yeah, we're not the source of the light, but we are to shine
but
that
here's
light,
what that says
God light.
This is what I'm thinking
talked about.
that I hadn't really thought about before with this story.
Okay, yeah, I was
'Cause
wondering.
we talk about being the light in the world, right? We talk about that. I think we used that phrase last. We're the light of the world, the salt of the world.
Of course, yeah.
But we can't really be that light without understanding those whom we are shining on.
Oh, what do you mean?
I mean, we can't really be a reflection of that light without understanding who the others understanding the other, and to do that, sometimes I think we have to begin to ask ourselves these questions.
Be curious.
We have to be curious about how we are relating to the world around us.
About ourselves, about them. It reminds me, do you remember we had a counseling professor, and one of the quotes he used to say was, "To listen is to love." It's really important.
Yeah.
And that's a part of being curious. Let's listen. Really listen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Yeah. That unconditional listening. Or what we've talked about before, listening for understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's, so we'll do a couple of takeaways.
Well, it's curiosity as intentional engagement that you talked about.
Well, that's a good takeaway right there. That's one takeaway.
All
We'll
right.
use that as number one.
Let's get to the
Curiosity is intentional engagement. But let's break that down a little bit more.
Okay.
So that we can really relate to it. And what I want to suggest is that it's also a best way of thinking of this is it's unconditional friendliness. Think about those people with whom you really don't want to be friendly. Think about those folks with whom you really jump on the bandwagon against, when the memes come out, when the texts come out, when everybody's sharing. I mean, even though it's in good fun, we're participating in this darkness when we do that. We're participating in this.
Kind of reinforcing it,
We're falling on those defaults.
It feels good to be with my tribe.
How do you reflect light that's connective in the world if we're falling back on our defaults? We have to be curious enough to even question our own orientation to the world around us.
Those echo chambers.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times do we stop and think, we're just reinforcing each other's.
And to ask ourselves, wait a minute, what's really going on here for me?
Yes.
In relation to this, what am I afraid of?
Well, true.
And how do I
love when I'm building up these barriers?
So all of this Advent season is about that. I mean, how do I love when, like you said, how do I love when I'm building up these barriers? It takes courage. We talked about that last week.
Right.
It takes confidence. We talked about that the week before.
First week, yeah.
Which is trusting that we all have this ground of being. We all share in this ground of being. So
We see everyone as sacred.
Right, and the curiosity is really about sitting in relationship to others. It's really about being present enough to them to look for how they're organizing their lives, or if they're organizing their lives around this awareness too. And where are they not? So I want to suggest that one of the ways that we can cultivate that is by getting better at detecting novelty and complexity in people, in everything.
Okay.
You know, in other words, adopt the mindset that everyone is a part of this being of God.
Okay.
Everyone's born with the Imago Dei.
Yeah, and that's tough with certain people.
Right.
A lot of people.
It's right, and we don't want to go there. But that's what Jesus was saying essentially in this. That's what we're here to do.
Act like it.
Act like it.
Yeah.
We're here to participate in this and helping others seeing
Which
this
is
too.
why belief
It's not
to
a,
love is more than I can intellectually affirm that. I have to act like it. I like that part.
and it's like be the change you want to see.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
We have to be the change. So
Exactly.
if it doesn't work, it's not on them, it's on us. You know, you've heard people say, "Well, I'll be good," but you know they're going to have to do something too. It's a two-way street.
But it really isn't.
It really isn't. It really
Yeah.
isn't. That's why Jesus is telling Nicodemus, "This is what you need to do."
Yes. And it's not, back to that original covenant. It's not an if, it's just, that's the way it is.
So we have
I won't love
curi-
if I'm required to love.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And why? Because that's the bigger picture.
Okay.
That's how we establish, that's how we bring about shalom
What's it-
and right relationships. So the second one,
Okay, I was
so the
gonna say,
first
what's
one is
another
get better at
takeaway?
detecting novelty and
Okay,
complexity.
okay.
You know, everyone's got an interesting story. We have to ask. So how else, the second thing is how can we get to some of that interesting stuff? We can skip some rungs on the intimacy ladder. Now that sort of sounds a little weird at first, but what
yes,
I
it
mean
does.
by that is think about your average conversations with just someone you meet. They tend to be incredibly superficial.
True.
And on curiosity,
Weather.
we're great at sort
Sports.
of, we have miles and miles and miles of shallow information.
Sure.
You know, Facebook, media, we love that kind of shallowness. So what about digging deeper? What about asking a more interesting question?
I think sometimes we're just afraid that we're going to come across as nosy. It makes us kind of vulnerable feeling, you know, that.
But not if we take it from the perspective of, you've got a great story, we all have a great story, we're all connected to this divine being, to the holiness.
They're actually interested in that person.
So where can we find this together?
That's loving.
That's loving.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
the default that is falling on
That's
falling on this
acting like
kingdom.
it.
Yeah.
That's acting
So
like
the third one then is the hardest one, and that's
There's a harder one?
yeah. Improving our tolerance for uncertainty.
Okay.
You know, this is the problem we're going to find when we're visiting with other people, when we decide to challenge our own discomfort with something that someone says, or with me thinking about John 3:16 and my discomfort with that text because of my rigid or evangelical days.
Mm-hmm.
I have to accept this idea of uncertainty, that there's more to the story, that there's more possibilities for healing, reconciliation, restoration than I see here. So I have to be open to how this story can unfold. I have to be curious about that.
Remember what Dominic Crossan said, that certainty that might be wrong will always trump uncertainty, which might be right.
Yeah.
We really default to certainty. We like to feel like we've got a hold of things.
So say that again.
Certainty which might be wrong will always trump uncertainty, which could be right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is the path, to have confidence, to trust in the ground of our being, and to begin to open up our hearts with courage, to face these fears,
Okay.
to challenge them.
Those are the first two Sundays.
And the way we do that is with curiosity, by practicing these intentional ways of engaging with our moments, engaging with others, even ourselves in these different contexts, because we're looking to be a part of this bigger picture of the light in the world. The consequence is this idea that life is blessed. How do we get there?
To be a blessing.
How do we make Advent great again? I got it in at the last. Okay.
Okay.
So Brad's
Maybe that's a good
that's
place
a good
to
place to
stop.
go out. Yeah. So Brad's gonna bring us a song, and we're so glad you all could be with us and participate in this journey with us for Advent, and we look forward to being with you next Sunday. Hope you have a blessed week. Brad.
And rain, the wind that sweeps the sky clean and lets the sun shine again. This is the most magnificent life has ever been. Here is heaven and earth and the brilliant sky between. Blessed is this life, I'm gonna celebrate being alive. Blessed is this life, I'm gonna celebrate being alive. In the afternoon and become the noise in the night. I trespass in temptation, suffering and sacrifice, but I awake each day in the new sunrise.